Imagine, if you will, a creature painted in these really crude strokes of ochre on the rough, uneven surfaces of ancient cave walls. Just keep that image in your mind for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing.
Right. Now, fast forward a few thousand years and picture that exact same creature stitched into the bright silk fabrics of a festival banner.
Oh, wow, that's quite a jump.
Yeah, and then bring it all the way to the present day. Picture a child whispering to this creature in a suburban backyard, like a child who has never been taught a single piece of folklore, but who somehow instinctively knows this creature's story.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
You're looking at something that belongs to absolutely everyone and, at the very same time, refuses to belong to anyone at all.
It's an arresting visual to kick off with, honestly. I mean, we usually think of history in terms of empires and monuments and big
This is the
battles.
big stuff.
Exactly. But sometimes the most enduring historical through line is just a small animal with long ears.
Today we are taking a deep dive into an unexpectedly profound piece of source material. We're looking at excerpts from The Eternal Softness of the Little Bunny.
And it is
It
profound.
really is. And our mission here is to figure out how this text takes a familiar, almost, banal backyard visitor and elevates her into a masterclass on resilience, intelligence, and survival.
Which is, well, it's an ambitious undertaking for any author. It is very easy to romanticize
Oh,
animals.
definitely. Like Disney movies?
Exactly, to turn them into cartoons that just dispense human moral lessons. But the source material takes a much harder path. It insists on her reality as a physical, breathing entity.
When I first opened the sources, my instinct was to categorize her as a global mascot.
Mask.
Yeah, like a corporate logo for humanity or a universal myth. But the text shuts that down immediately.
It really
It
does.
makes this stark distinction on page 1.
Yeah.
She is not a symbol. She is a presence. And honestly, that distinction took me a minute to wrap my head around.
It's a tricky philosophical pivot.
Right, because if I think about a symbol, it's something static. A stop sign is a symbol. But a presence implies something that pushes back against the space it occupies.
That's a great way to put it. A symbol stands in for something absent, whereas a presence is the undeniable reality of a thing being exactly where it is.
Yeah, it's there. It's real.
By calling her a presence, the text strips away our human tendency to use animals merely as mirrors for our own egos. It forces us to look at her on her own terms.
And the author starts this by tackling her physical size, right?
Yes. The text points out that she is small, but it vehemently rejects the idea that smallness is a deficit.
The analogies used for her smallness are just striking. The author says she is small, the way a seed is small, and small, the way the first breath after crying is small.
Those are beautiful lines.
I want to linger on those, actually, because they do a lot of heavy lifting for the philosophy of this piece.
Let's look at the mechanics behind those comparisons. A seed is not a compromised miniature tree.
Right. It's not like a bonsai.
Exactly. A seed is an incredibly dense, highly pressurized vessel of potential. It contains the entire blueprint for a towering oak, but it's perfectly optimized for transport and survival.
And what about that first breath after crying?
Physiologically, crying dysregulates the nervous system. It's chaotic.
You're just completely out of sorts.
Yeah, and that tiny, jagged first breath inward, that is the biological reset button. It is a massive reclamation of control disguised as a fragile sound.
Wow. So the text is telling you that her smallness is actually a highly efficient distillation of power,
Precisely. It's concentrated power.
which sets up this idea of a localized presence. But then the text throws a curveball because it moves from her localized presence to her global omnipresence.
It zooms way out.
Yeah, and this is where my brain started trying to connect some very disparate dots.
Yeah.
Because she shows up in East Asian mythology, right? Sitting on the moon.
Yes, rhythmically pounding the elixir of immortality with a mortar and pestle.
Right, the moon rabbit. A deeply ingrained cultural figure.
Representing ultimate dedication, patience, and a sort of quiet cosmic magic.
But then you jump over to Northern European traditions. And there, she has nothing to do with the moon or potions. She is the herald of spring.
She becomes a biological calendar.
Exactly. She's the creature pressing up through the frost, her nose twitching at what the author calls the first green smell of a returning world.
An anchor to the changing of the seasons and the physical thaw of the earth.
And then we switch continents again to West African and indigenous American traditions, and she transforms into the trickster,
The one outwitting the massive lumbering predators.
knowing precisely when to bolt and when to hold perfectly still. So playing the skeptic for a moment here, I tried to find the biological link.
How did you try to rationalize it?
Well, I figured, rabbits breed quickly and adapt to almost any biome, so maybe they're just everywhere, and cultures just randomly assign them jobs.
Ah, I see. Just a statistical probability thing.
Right. But the text suggests it's not random at all. How does one creature manage to hold these wildly contradictory job descriptions? I mean, a patient potion maker, a springtime herald, and a chaotic trickster.
It seems contradictory only if you apply a rigid, modern human resume to her.
Oh, that's fair.
The actual denominator, the reason she inhabits all these roles, is her uncontainability. The text explicitly states that she is everywhere because she is not owned.
And because she slips through every fence.
Exactly. Think of it like open source software and technology.
I like that analogy.
Because no single entity owns the core code, anyone can adapt it to solve their specific problem. Every time a culture tries to put a metaphorical fence around her meaning, she slips through the gaps.
So it's her evasiveness that makes her a blank canvas.
Precisely. The author beautifully notes that she is already becoming something slightly different in the hands of whoever needs her next.
Meaning she adapts to the cultural anxiety of the moment.
Yes. A culture terrified of death and impermanence looks at the moon and needs to see eternal, patient rhythm. A culture emerging from a brutal, starving winter needs to see the twitching nose of returning life.
And a marginalized group, living under the thumb of oppressive power, needs a trickster who proves that the small can outwit the mighty.
You've got it. She mirrors the specific survival mechanism a society requires at that exact moment.
Becoming something different in the hands of whoever needs her next. That actually transitions perfectly into the mechanics of how she survives, especially that trickster element.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Because it's one thing to say she outwits the powerful. It's another to understand how she actually manages it. She doesn't have armor. She has no fangs. She has very little mass.
The text uses this concept to completely redefine our conventional understanding of strength.
It directly challenges the prevailing narrative of what it takes to be powerful in a hostile environment, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We have this deep-seated assumption that surviving requires hardening yourself.
The author writes that she carries her smallness like a lantern, which is just an incredible image.
It illuminates the world around her, but the light doesn't consume her.
The fundamental argument here is that softness is not fragility. Being small, fast, and tender is not a failure to be large, slow, and armored.
We constantly conflate softness with weakness. If something is soft, we assume it is easily broken.
Right.
But the little bunny survives not by attempting to forge an artificial shell, but by being relentlessly, unapologetically, exactly what she is.
I think about this in terms of how we're taught to view success or progression, whether it's in corporate America or just, in pop culture.
How so?
Well, take almost any video game. What does survival mean as you progress?
It usually means leveling up.
Right. And leveling up universally means getting physically larger. You strap on thicker plates of armor, you find a heavier weapon. The ultimate goal is to become an untouchable tank.
But the little bunny is doing the complete opposite.
She survives by utterly min-maxing her starting stats. She doesn't put on armor, she just gets infinitely better at feeling the shift in the wind.
That analogy holds up perfectly when you look at the physics and evolutionary biology of it. True power doesn't always look like kinetic force.
Because mass is actually a liability sometimes.
Exactly. The text mentions that her ears tune to frequencies the powerful cannot hear, and her feet know the topography of the ground in ways towering creatures just miss.
A massive predator has force, sure.
But mass requires immense energy to move and redirect. The predator is fundamentally clumsy. When she escapes a trap, the text insists she didn't just get lucky.
She escapes because she possesses a higher resolution of reality.
Yes.
So I actually have a slightly embarrassing personal anecdote that backs this up.
Oh, please share.
I once spent, I'm not kidding, almost 45 minutes trying to shoo a single rabbit out of my vegetable garden.
45 minutes?
Yes. And I'm a grown adult. I have a massive brain. I have tools. I have height.
The apex predator.
Right. But every single time I anticipated her moving left, she was already gone to the right. She wasn't out thinking me. She was out noticing me.
She was operating on a completely different processing speed. And the source text delves into the specific type of intelligence that makes that processing speed possible.
And it's not intellectual, right?
No, it is entirely physical. The author notes she is a creature of the body. She lives close to the earth and breathes it. She makes no attempt to transcend her animal nature.
Which really flies in the face of how we usually define intelligence. We tend to think intelligence happens entirely between our ears.
It's a very modern bias.
But the text describes how she freezes and then explodes into motion, describing her entire body as an instrument of listening.
She perceives the world through her senses long before she knows it intellectually.
The author summarizes this with a line that really threw me. They wrote, "Embodiment is not a limitation on intelligence, it is intelligence."
To understand why that line is so disruptive, you really have to look at the philosophical baggage we all carry.
Like Western philosophy.
Exactly. In the West, we are heavily influenced by a Cartesian dualism.
René Descartes, right? Mind and body are separate.
That's the one. The idea that the conscious thinking mind is the true self, and the body is just a somewhat clumsy vehicle ferrying our brain around.
A meat sack carrying a computer.
Precisely. We view physical reactions as primal limitations that our superior rational mind has to constantly manage and overcome.
We spend our whole lives trying to intellectualize our physical responses. I mean, think about the average listener's day.
It's mostly sedentary.
We are essentially brains floating in jars, staring at glowing rectangles, processing spreadsheets, and managing digital communications.
And yet, what happens when you get a passive-aggressive email?
Oh, my shoulders tense up immediately. My heart rate elevates. My body is screaming that there's a threat in the environment.
And what do?
We tell our bodies to shut up because we're just in an office and we need to be rational. So are we basically ignoring highly sophisticated sensory data?
We are suppressing an incredibly advanced early warning system. Neuroscience actually backs up the text's assertion here.
Really? How so?
Think about how the human brain processes threats. Sensory data, like the sound of a snapping twig in the woods, hits your amygdala milliseconds before it ever reaches your prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the rational thinking part.
Yes, your body initiates an adrenaline spike and prepares your muscles to run before you have even formulated the conscious thought. What was that sound?
So the body knows before the brain does.
Exactly. The little bunny represents a unified intelligence where she doesn't separate the feeling from the action. The text says her whole body is an instrument of listening because the listening and the reacting are a single continuous loop.
She doesn't hear a twig snap, pull up a mental spreadsheet comparing the decibel level to known predator sounds, and then draft a proposal to her legs to start running.
No, she simply trusts her embodiment. Her physical intuition is her genius.
If this raw physical intuition is so vital, it brings up an interesting question. Who in our modern over-intellectualized world actually still recognizes it?
The text gives a very specific answer to that. Children.
Right. Children recognize her instantly. And this leads into a very grounded, sobering part of the source material. It tackles the reality of her vulnerability.
The author wisely avoids painting a utopian picture.
Yeah, it gets a bit dark.
Well, if you are going to praise softness and presence, you must acknowledge the very real danger that presence attracts.
The text observes that children instinctively love her because she is soft and quick and somehow safe. But it clarifies that she isn't safe because she's magically immune to getting hurt.
Not at all.
She's safe because she knows how to live in a dangerous world without letting danger become the only thing that matters. She refuses to let danger be the whole of the story.
This is the pivot from biological survival to deep psychological resilience.
It's so profound.
The text plainly states her reality. She is prey. She lives in an ecosystem surrounded by things that want to consume her. She carries grief. She loses her warrens. She loses her kin.
It's a harsh existence, and yet the core philosophical takeaway of this entire document is how she responds to that harshness.
Which is what makes it so resonant.
Her grief does not make her hard. The author states that the most radical thing about her is that she remains exactly as soft as she began.
That is the crux of her power. Let's look at human psychology, specifically how we process trauma or extended stress.
We usually don't stay soft.
We really don't. When humans get hurt, the natural psychological response is defensive armoring. We build walls.
We become cynical. We close ourselves off.
We adopt a hardened persona to ensure no one can exploit our vulnerabilities again. We survive, sure, but at the cost of our empathy and our connection to the world.
We let the winter turn us to ice.
Yes, that's a good way to phrase it. But the little bunny experiences the same brutal winters, the same sheer terror of the hunt, and she refuses to armor up.
She maintains what psychologists might call radical psychological flexibility.
Exactly.
The author paints this beautiful picture of her keeping her wide eyes, keeping her nose twitching at the green smell of the world, even after loss and even after the long holding of breath in the dark of the burrow.
It's very evocative.
I think anyone listening can relate to that feeling. We have all had our version of the burrow. We've all had periods where we just had to hide in the dark, hold our breath, and wait for the danger or the crisis to pass over us.
It is a fundamentally universal experience, but the critical moment is what happens after you leave the burrow.
Right. Who are you when you come out?
Do you emerge covered in emotional armor, suspicious of every shadow? Or do you emerge with your eyes wide, ready to smell the first green shoot of spring?
The text argues that remaining tender in a world filled with predators is not a symptom of naivete. It is an act of fierce, almost unimaginable courage.
It requires an immense amount of bravery to stay vulnerable.
Choosing to stay soft when you know exactly how sharp the teeth are. That completely reframes the whole concept of the bunny.
It elevates her from a backyard pest to a philosophical icon.
So, as we pull back and look at the whole picture, what is the ultimate takeaway? The text wraps up by reminding us of her eternal nature. It says, essentially, she doesn't require our belief to exist.
She predates our analysis. As the text beautifully notes, she was here before the very first human looked up at the moon and imagined they saw a figure looking back.
And she will be here long after our current cultures fade into history.
She twitches her nose and the world begins again. That is the closing line of the excerpts.
And it brings us full circle. From the cave walls to the festival banners, she represents an unending, rapid cycle of soft renewal.
She is a biological mechanism of hope, small, fast, and entirely unbothered by our attempts to define her.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to carry with you today. We talked extensively about how she adapts to the culture that needs her, becoming something slightly different in the hands of whoever needs her next.
A mirror for whatever survival mechanism is required in the moment.
Exactly. So take a hard look at your own life right now. Look at the challenges you are facing this week. What specific version of the little bunny do you need to channel today?
It's a great question.
Do you need the trickster's swift, evasive intelligence to navigate a complex, towering bureaucracy at work? Do you need the moon rabbit's steady, rhythmic patience to keep grinding away at a long-term goal when no one else is watching? Or perhaps, do you simply need the radical, fierce courage to remain soft, to keep your eyes wide and your empathy intact after a very long, very hard winter?
It's your choice which presence you invite in.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.